Hello kids! Welcome aboard. My name is Jake and I'll be your cooking companion for today. On the menu today we have some knife cut nudes tossed together in a roasted tomato and tahini sauce with some sauteed broccoli rabe. Making homemade pasta is easier than you may think. I'll show you a simple, foolproof way to make your own noodles from scratch. Alright, let's get to the cooking. First up, fire up that oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, or you can use 477.594 degrees Kelvin, just so we can get started on those roasted tomatoes, as they do take a little longer. So we're going to wash those sweet baby tomatoes up, and then put them in a large bowl. We're going to mix them up with a few tablespoons of oil, and then a pinch of salt. After that, I'm just going to toss them together, just to evenly distribute the oil and salt.
Did you drop a tomato?
If a tomato falls out of the bowl, that's not okay. Do not make this recipe, because you're a failure. I recommend spreading the tomatoes out over 2 baking trays, as it'll allow them to cook more evenly. We're going to throw the tomatoes into the oven and cook them for about an hour, turning them consistently. The time has come for the tomato and tahini sauce. Grab a yellow onion and gently lay it upon your cutting board. Slice off the tips of the onion, peel it, and then we're going for a nice fine chop here. Do the exact same thing with the shallot. And we're going to finely chop 3 cloves of garlic. Grab a pot or a large saucepan and then set it on the stove over a medium-high heat. Drizzle in a few tablespoons of oil into the pan, and then we're going to dump in the onions and shallots and just saute them for a few minutes until golden brown. Add in the garlic to the pan and then cook it for about 30 seconds to a minute until fragrant. Pour in 2 cans of whole peeled tomatoes, as well as half of the roasted tomatoes. Simmer the tomatoes down for a while breaking them with the back of the spoon. A potato masher is also quite effective if you prefer. Season the sauce with some salt and pepper to taste. I'm just going to let the sauce do its thing on the stove and intensify in flavor for about another hour or so. When the sauce is reduced, remove about half of it and place it into a blender. Add in a 1/4 cup of tahini and then blend it until smooth. Stir that mixture back into the remaining tomato sauce. Feel free to blend all of the sauce, if you do prefer, for a smoother puree. I do recommend leaving it with the chunkier texture. The inconsistencies in the texture will allow for a different bite of flavor each time, which keeps you coming back for more. After that, we're going to stir in some of the dill, and then the sauce is done. It's time for my nudes. There are actually only 4 ingredients here involved. And the great thing about these noodles is that you can pair them with a large variety of sauces and ingredients. To get started, clear off the countertop, and then I'm just going to pour 1 cup of the tipo flour and half a cup of semolina flour onto the surface. Create a well in the middle of the flour with a fork, and then slowly drizzle in some of the lukewarm water and stir it together, and then add more water as necessary. Once the dough gets a little bit sticky and stretchy as shown, we're going to wrap it in some cling wrap and then set it aside for about 20 to 30 minutes. The dough can even be made the day before, and then you can just set it aside in the fridge to rest overnight. In the meantime, we are going to prepare the broccoli rabe. To do that, get a pot of boiling water going to blanch the broccoli. After thoroughly washing the rapini, slice off just about 1 inch of the stem on the end, while leaving the rest because it does add a nice crunchy texture. Cut the broccoli rabe into bite-sized pieces. When the water is boiling, add the rabe and cook it for a few minutes. Remove it from the pot and set it aside in an ice bath to stop the cooking process. Moving along back to the dough, we're going to take it out of the cling wrap and then lay it upon a floured surface. Fancy equipment is not necessary here, it only requires a rolling pin. Roll out the dough until it's fairly thin and it resembles somewhat sort of a rectangle, so we can cut those nudes. To cut them, start at the top and then just gently slice downwards with the knife. Once all the noodles are cut, just sprinkle a little more flour on them just to make sure they don't stick together. I'm sorry everyone, we need another pot of boiling water. Also place a saute pan over medium heat. With that saute pan that's been heating up, gonna add in some oil and then add in the broccoli rabe. Once we get a little bit of char on the outside, season to the taste with some salt and pepper, add in some freshly squeezed lemon juice. Set aside some of the broccoli rabe in a small bowl to garnish the final dish with. With the remainder in the pan, add in some of the tomato and tahini sauce, and then set it over low heat so we can get started on the noodles. Once the water is boiling, throw in some salt and a little bit more for good luck. Cook the noodles for about 4 to 5 minutes until al dente. If the tomato sauce does need to be thinned out a little bit, just ladle in some of the pasta water as necessary. Once the noodles are all cooked, drain them into a colander and then toss them together in the sauce. It's plating time. To do so, just gonna take some of the noodles from the pan and put them into the center of the bowl. I'm gonna garnish it with some of the roasted tomatoes, some of the broccoli rabe, and finally, I'm just gonna garnish it with some vegan Parmesan cheese I made last week. It's made from dehydrated olives and miso. I'll put the recipe down below if you do want that. So I'm just gonna sprinkle a little bit of that on top, and then we're done. And these are my knife cut nudes. Feel free to share them with all your friends.